been a while since I did a video about a visual resource of some kind, like an art book, a photography book, graphic design, something like that. And I realized I had the perfect candidate for this sitting on my desk, staring me in the face for months now. It's not a book that I haven't read yet. I actually have read it and enjoyed it a great deal. It's just that I'm only just now getting around to talking about it. And the book is called Underworld, Sites of Concealment. And it was created by the photographer Peter Seidel and with text by Manfred Sack and Klaus Klemp. And I want to show some pictures from it. The problem is that there were no excerpts from the book on the Amazon.com page for it, and even on the original publisher's page. The publisher, by the way, is an outfit named Hennessy and Ingalls, who do a lot of graphic design and architecture work, and they have a bookstore in the Los Angeles area. I plan to get to them eventually if I can ever get out there. And so when I was looking through it and saying to myself, I should really show some of this because it seems ridiculous to talk about a book like this and not show some examples. But because there were no images available readily, I had to prop the book up and then take pictures of it with my camera. So I apologize if things look a little hinky. But I want to start with the cover because I love the picture that's on the cover. This is actually a waste disposal facility in Frankfurt. And I love the design of it. And I love the fact that even though this was something that was designed for a very specific industrial application, it has an aesthetic to it. And this is something that I saw common to a lot of the man-made things that were shown in the book. And I don't know if that's because there's this specific aesthetic about making industrial things look elegant and interesting in German culture, or if it's just something that they selected for when they took the pictures. But it's wonderful to look at, just from the point of view of the design aesthetics alone. There's a reason why people who do production design for movies, for instance, are really fond of this book. Now, many of the things that are shown in the book are man-made, like the subway tunnels that I'm showing here. And some of them are man-made but seem to have an interface between man-made and natural, like this underground water storage system. And some of them are purely natural, but have been modified by the hand of man. Like, for instance, this underground grotto that's been converted into a kind of a party atmosphere sort of thing. I really like this. So there's a lot of diversity in the choices that they've made in terms of what they are for, where they might be found, what their origins were. And many of them, I've noticed, are also a little deceptive in the sense that you can play a game with yourself. You can look at these pictures and you can ask yourself, what is this really for? And then you look at the label and realize that you were quite wrong. Some of them are fairly obvious. Right now, this is, of course, a bank vault. That one isn't terribly difficult to figure out. But this one here actually deceived me. I thought for the longest time when I saw this picture that I was looking at some kind of nuclear waste disposal area, a place where maybe they store things like spent nuclear fuel or what have you. But those cans actually contain film. This is a film preservation archive, and many of the films that are preserved here are national treasures from Germany of one kind or another. And so I found it fun to have my expectations occasionally defeated that way, in a good, constructive way. So as you can imagine, when I was looking at a book like this, I was saying to myself, what could these be? Or if I have a space in mind in one of my books, what images here would suggest the kind of atmosphere that I would want to conjure up? And that's a fairly common way to use images like this from a graphic design resource of some kind. To play that game where you try to figure out what they're for and then you apply that into your own work. But I found it just as interesting to talk about the rationales behind the design or the creation of one thing or another. Why were things made this way? And some of the rationales for the designs that we see are not always immediately visible. They're not always immediately comprehensible unless we're engineers ourselves. But it's a fun game to play because it gets you to stretch your imagination a little bit and also maybe to encourage you to do some homework. So when I look at things like this security vault, for instance, this is an underground bunker, as you can guess. You can see all of the different layers that you have to go through to get to the inner sanctum. That kind of design is not difficult to figure out. But a design like this underground water storage system, for instance, the rationale behind the design of those columns, for instance, that's not as obvious. It looks beautiful. There's no question about it. But there's a specific reason it looks this way. And so, again, I'm encouraged, and I encourage you, if you encounter things like this, to go and learn that much more about what it is you're looking at and why it's that way. Not just to take it as a design motif, but to take it as a spur towards further research. So that's a big part of why I recommend a book like this. It's not just because it's fun to look through, but because it it spurs you to think that much more broadly and deeply about what it is you're looking at, why it exists the way it does, and how those things can give you even better ideas for what it is that you want to put into your stories. And so once again, the book is called Underworld, Sites of Concealment. It is only available in a print edition. There is no digital edition. And honestly, I can't see something this big and sumptuous looking being offered properly in a digital edition anyway. The print copy is only $30 on Amazon. It's not that expensive. And if any of the images that you have seen here intrigue you, by all means, check it out and see what kinds of things it provokes you to imagine or to learn more about as spaces for the work that you're doing in your stories. See what you think.